Every week, this car just gets a little bit more operational. This week's episode is going to be about the headlights. I'm going to route the wiring all the way out to the headlights and the front turn signals. And that's in anticipation of the LA Lit Show. It's coming up, I think, in like 2 weeks. So I'm trying to get this car more drivable, out to some of the events, maybe meet some of you guys. So if you see me, say hello. You'll know because it's a green car without the side windows. I also had to get this hood adjusted and the seal sorted out. We'll do that sometime probably next week. Just going to start by disconnecting the battery, as always. So I'm a little bummed out this week. One of my Porsches was wrecked. And if you know this channel, you know it's not this one because it's right here. You know it's not Mac because the engine is here behind the camera. And I have one other car that I'm just not ready to give all the details yet, but I wasn't the one driving and the car's damaged pretty bad. So been dealing a lot with tow companies and insurance companies and the whole 9 yards. So this is hopefully relaxing for me. And I will promise to post all the details of what happened once that issue is resolved and we get the car back and whatnot. I'll tell you exactly what happened, but for right now, I just can't do it. So bear with me as we kind of get through hopefully an easy project, and I'll give you guys all the details later. A lot of these wires have been replaced, and they branch out to go to the left light and to the right light. One goes down to the battery. There's the horns and the optional fog lights. So I'm just trying to branch these together with new sleeving. And then some of the wires go through this hole right here, which is actually a conduit that runs under the car into the headlight bucket. So I'm trying to get the minimum wires, to go through that conduit. So I got the diagram here. And I'm just looking at the colors. It looks like I need the black, green, and the headlights are yellow and white. And I've got various different size PVC sleeving here, just kind of left over from other projects, but this should work out well. I'm just gonna find the one that fits the tightest, and we'll go ahead and slip it on. And this stuff is called Wire Aid. It's just a lubrication that helps you slide this stuff on. It can get pretty tight. But you want it pretty tight because this stuff doesn't shrink. It just goes on. This sleeve here kind of goes up inside the other sleeve. So it just kind of makes a nice junction right there. And then I might push it up just a little higher because I don't want this to be as long as it is because it's going to go kind of down and then over and then into that hole. I'm going to go ahead and run a sleeve in this one. It's going to need a little bit bigger sleeve because it's got this bulky wire in there. But that goes all the way over here, kind of along these, there's clips along here. And then it's going to route down and then right back to that battery. And sometimes it helps to heat this up with a heat gun if necessary. And I just wipe off the excess wire lube. Kind of cleans the wires too. This one breaks out like that for the battery, and then this side gets another one, which I think I can go back to the thinner stuff. I hope this is long enough because this, I think, is all I have left. There we go. I think that's got it. Okay, so this goes to the battery, and then this will branch out different places. And like I said, this sleeve is probably too long, so let's just get it routed in the car and then see where we can trim it back. Or I can suck it inside there. So that's good. There's the junction there. It goes, you know, under here and then down this way. When you bend these, the paint comes off. So once they're bent, I'll just come back either with some heat shrink or some paint or both, just to make sure that that's all black again. But now it's running underneath there, and then same thing on this side. It goes through the body clip and then down over to the battery. This connector here is bad. It's just frayed. It needs to be replaced. But now it's going to go into this hole, but we have to have another branch right about here so that the horn wire, this big heavy one, can go through that hole. It gets a grommet. The fog light wire is its own wire, and it's just gonna get covered up in the sleeve. So I'm going to, you know, pre-measure this so I don't have to push it through too much. That should do it right there. And because I don't have fog lights, this is just gonna get coiled up and wrapped around itself and stored right here. It would be long enough to go out here to wherever fog lights if you put them on the bumper brackets. This has got enough length to do that, but the factory just coiled it up if you didn't need it. I'm getting to a point that I thought was pretty important. The interesting thing is all these wires emanate from the fuse block, which is right up there. And so everything is kind of going one direction, power coming from the fuse. But this also needs a ground, and the grounding is done internal to the body, either on this hole right here, or there's another hole down here around the corner. So this wire here is sort of, there's two ground wires, one for the turn signal and one for the horn. This is for the turn signal and the horn actually. But then the headlights get their own heavy gauge ground. It comes out of that hole right there. So that ground is actually coming from the headlight. So it's coming from a different area. So what happens is that ground wire is actually with inside a sleeve. It actually goes up into this hose right here, or this sleeve right here, and it takes a U-turn and comes back out. So I just wanted to kind of show you that because it's a little bit unconventional, a little bit hard to replicate. And I think it's gonna be also a little tight fit in here because this wire doesn't have a lot of, this sleeve doesn't have a lot of room for a U-turn. I've also looked at a lot of pictures online on how this whole junction here occurs. I'm also just practicing kind of showing you outside the car because it's a little easier, but these are my snap ring pliers, and they actually, when you squeeze on it, actually pulls it apart. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to put that inside the sleeving there and stretch it a little bit. That combined with the heat gun just lets me work that material out just a little bit. So I'm just able to stretch that sleeving just a little tiny bit and really softens it up. So you can see how it's got a flare to it. That's going to allow that wire to come in, make a U-turn, and come back out. That's how it should look. So it looks like the brown wire is coming from the fuse panel, but it's not. It's actually coming from the headlight. And then the other wires are going to be coming through as well through, you know, this bigger piece. But that's just an example of kind of the detail that I'm trying to achieve. You can soften it up, but it doesn't shrink. It just actually, you can expand it, do whatever you need it to do. But it is a rigid material, semi-rigid material. It is not heat shrink. It also is a little tougher than heat shrink. You can't dig your fingernail into it and cut it. So it's pretty firm. It's really difficult to tear it, rip it. It's pretty durable. This is what's used in the engine bay and under the car and all that. So I actually like this stuff. It's available from McMaster Car. So here's how that junction looks. You know, there's a branch right here. This is going over to the passenger side. This piece curls around, and then this is the one that's, this big one's the one that's going to go to the headlights. This is going to go to the horn. This is going to get wrapped around for the fog lights. And then it looks like the ground is coming from here, but it's not. It's coming from here. That's where it looped around, and the junction all fits nice and tight. You know, like I said, I stretched that out. So this, I'm pretty happy with how that looks. It looks very factory to me. It looks very new. There's no tape or no anything. You know, even right here, there's a junction, no tape or anything. So sometimes you can use PVC glue. I think the factory used some glue there, but I'm not gonna do it. Oftentimes people ask me, why don't I show a list of tools required to do the job? And snap ring pliers to do an electrical job is pretty unheard of. And that's why I typically don't do a list of tools, because I don't know what tools I'm gonna be pulling out to just do different things. I like to just share with you guys the whole process, the whole journey, not after I've done it once. I'm just showing you exactly my thought process of how to tackle problems as they pop up. To me, the snap ring pliers are the only pliers that go in the reverse direction. So they work great for stretching things out like snap rings. Also works on electrical sleeving, so who knew? Now I'm pulling the headlight off again so we can get the wires behind it. The screwdriver looks like it's broken. Turn my headlight on. Headlight for the headlight, right? There is a spacer back there. It's gonna probably drop out maybe. Nope. And this is where you got to be very careful you don't scratch the paint. There is a seal behind there, but you definitely don't want to pry too much. This should lift off. There we go. Normally the plug is right here on the headlight, but because this has a special module for the LED, this has a remote connector. This is the conduit where the wires come out, and it's got a nice bell mouth to it so it doesn't cut the wires. But hopefully, you know, it's 4 wires. Hopefully they can all snake through there. So I left myself that loop there. I'm gonna try to get some wire you know, through the conduit, and then I'll probably tie it with some of that paracord and just yank it. That's what I was afraid of. It's such a sharp turn. You can try to pre-bend it a little bit, go this direction. I really don't like that sharp object in there, so I'm going to try something a little bit softer than this baling wire. Try to, you know, get that through there. Ha! The only problem with that is I just shot that lube all over the place, but that's all right. So now take this tape off. Ta-da! That was awesome. Now, I will say that this can be a lot harder. I've heard horror stories about getting this wire through here. And so this conduit was replaced because all this section was rusty. In fact, the whole headlight bucket has been taken out and put back in. So if you weld it and you're not careful with the welding and you're using a MIG welder and you get all those like little whiskers inside that conduit, it can make pulling that wire through almost impossible. So If you are doing metal work on your car, you might want to pre-fit the wire harness and just make sure that the conduit's clear, because a lot of them are either dented, crinkled, completely distorted, or they've got weld whiskers on the inside. The wires for the turn signal that goes right here, those wires are here, and they're going to come out through the bottom of the bucket and right to the back of that beehive there. So that's the way I think that's the way the factory routed them. That's why there's two holes in the bottom of the bucket. One's a drain and one's for the turn signal. Now I'm just terminating these wires into the headlight plug. So we'll get these, kind of close to the same length. Strip them back and crimp on. I have these, which is a brand new headlight plug. These are sort of universal. This one is ceramic. It's high temperature. It really is not going to make a difference on these LED lights, but that's what I have. And this has like a rubber connector that's somewhat sealed and so forth. So these are great quality, and this car gets the best. So that's what I'm going to do. These are single barrel crimps, or actually dual crimps. So I will crimp those on with my crimper tool. And this, like I said, will be better than it probably was at the factory. So the only thing I got to do is decide where the high beam and where the low beam is on this 3-pin plug. This is the Joe Leone diagrams I've had forever from 356 Electrics. And of course he has the headlight socket explained here with the pins. So 56B, if you follow that, that's the yellow wires. Those are the low beams. The white wires are the high beams, 56A over here, and then ground. So the two that are parallel are ground and 56A, which would be the high beams. I'm just directly connecting this to the battery to make sure I understand what he means by connection side, because I got a little confused there. Actually, this is the low beam here. Low and high. So I have labeled this connector with the ground, low, and high. So now I'm going to double check it against the actual plug wiring there and make sure I got it right. It's a good thing I checked, because I had the ground and the high beams on the wrong side. So when he says connection side, he means the side that you push the connectors in from, not how it connects to the headlight. It was just a little confusing to me, but luckily, if you spend enough time, you can figure this stuff out. So these get switched, no big deal. I've linked this tool a million times, but I highly recommend it. This is the only way to do wiring correctly. And some of you asked if there's a cheaper version of this. This is the cheap version. This is what they call a GM crimper tool, but this is an off-brand GM crimper tool. If you buy the Tyco or the Amp or the TE Electric or whatever, it's a lot more expensive. This tool is still $100, but it is so worth it. I've also said that before too, but I'll say it again. Don't twist these wires. You don't want to do that, because it interferes with the way these barrel crimps go down inside the wiring. You really want to avoid twisting them if at all possible. And these guys go in from the back. A nice little click. That's it. Those aren't coming out. And then this just slides over. And that keeps us together. Like I said, this is ceramic, super high temperature. Some of the high power halogen bulbs will get hot. And so this is designed to handle the high temperature. We're not going to have any heat issues, because this being a 6-volt car, we don't want to put too much strain on the generator and the battery. So we're going LEDs on this one because it's low power and high light output. Plus the vintage Trader bulbs look very accurate to the H4s anyways. So it's almost like a win-win. That's a generic grommet there, but it's okay for now. I'll go back and check the parts book, maybe change that out later. And I'll also order the correct drain. The drain has a long snout to it, so water doesn't get kicked up into the bucket. It can only go out. So those are the little details that I'll continue to make notes on my to-do list. Check them off as I get more time. So there's the terminations on the headlight plug, correct color wires. I slit that a little bit so that can aim down. There's a grommet there. This is in the right location now for the turn signals and the running lights. Just going to direct those back there. There's plenty of room for those wires. And like I said before, this headlight has not been restored. I am going to restore it very carefully in the future, but for now we're just putting things together so we can kind of drive the car a little bit more. This whole thing is only held in with one screw, which is pretty amazing. Got lucky twice. Love it when a plan comes together twice in a row. Another thing I like to do is use some dielectric grease on these grounds. I've just put in some of the 15 amp fuses here for the headlights. This is for high and low beam, left and rights. Everything's checked. All the connections here on the light relay have been double checked. I looked at them pretty carefully. So I am ready to put the ground strap on the battery, see what kind of action we get on the headlights. I've also gone underneath the dash and connected all the wires to the light switch. So there's not many. It's the 3 big red ones. There's this 57, the red white wire. That's the one that goes right here to that relay. It's actually the smaller one, but that's been done. Also to the light switch, 58, that's this wire right here, number 7. It goes to the light switch. So I verified all those are connected. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it on. Listen for any fuses that might pop. That's the parking lights. And that's the headlights. And they look like they're on. On, off. And then on the stock here, we should be able to go high beams or forward. Yeah, I can see a difference. And then if you pull back, it should flash the high beams. And it looks like it's working great. The only other thing I wanted to check on this is that the wiring here on the fuse panel has the left and the right. So this will be left and right. It's actually backwards as the way it is on the car. The rightmost wire is for the left, which is kind of weird. But what I thought I would do is leave the lights on. Right now the headlights are on. And if I pull a fuse, it should disable the headlight according to how the wiring is here. So this is low beam left, and if I take that out, I think that left light should go out. So this is the left, this is fuse number 10, low beam left. And sure enough, that's the one that goes out. Low beam right. Oops, I didn't clip that in right. This is low beam right. Yep, and that one goes out. So these wires are in the correct location. If they're flipped, it probably would have a backwards reaction. So let's turn the high beams on and look and see if the white wire is in the right place. Yep, that's the left, and this one should be the right. Yeah. Yeah, 25, 40 amp fuses. Because these are LEDs, they shouldn't require that much power. So I'm going to leave them here with these 15 amp fuses. That's plenty of power to run those LEDs. Hey, the headlights are in and operational, plus all that wiring has been tidied up here in the front area. I haven't driven it at night. It's still daytime, but I will test them out. Probably need to aim them a little bit, adjust things because they have to point at the right location. So I may drive up to a building or a driveway or something and mess around with the adjustments. But anxious to try it out at night. Yes, they do look bright. One thing I noticed right away, the LEDs, they switch on or flash from high beam to low beam really quick. With the traditional halogen bulbs, there's always like a ramp up, ramp down in light. The LEDs are just like instant on, instant off. It's a little bit more of a modern feel, but you know, I think it's well worth it. I am not gonna put the relays in. I did that in Mac. Those are gonna probably be halogen bulbs, but the relays are helpful to protect the headlight switch and also get higher voltage out to the LEDs. But because they don't consume as much power, it's not as taxing on the electrical system. So I don't think it's going to harm the headlight switch, and I don't think there's going to be big voltage drops because all my wiring is in good condition. So I'd like this car to be as original as possible, never mind the LEDs, but I don't want to alter the wiring and add a bunch of relays in there that probably aren't necessary. The LEDs really solve that problem of current draw. It's going to improve the night driving experience because it's going to be brighter, but it's also going to save the generator. I'm not going to be broken down on the side of the road with a bad generator because I've driven multiple hours at night. All the things on, it's about like 30 amps and the generator can only do 30 amps. So you're really not charging the battery at night with the headlights on. So anyways, I'm pretty happy. Thanks you guys for being here, and stay tuned for more 356 videos. I'm looking forward to heading out to the show. I think it's in 2 weeks. I'll be at the LA Lit Show. So if you see me, say hello.